Muy buenos días, muy buenas tardes y muy buenas noches a todos los ciudadanos del internet y de Puerto Rico en particular. Soy Edwin Jusino y esto es Radio FBNET, y el programa de hoy viene bastante cargado, así que pasemos rápido. Hoy tenemos una entrevista con un compañero y digamos que en primicia nos presentó que hay una posibilidad, o que aparentemente CONCACAF tuvo un error o algo pasó, pero Puerto Rico FC no está en el calendario oficial de la Copa de Clubes del 2017. Así que pasemos a esa sección más rápido que volando. Bueno, y ahora nos acompaña el compañero periodista británico Nathan Carr del blog The Home of CaribbeanFootball.com. La entrevista va a ser en inglés. Trataremos de que se pueda entender lo mejor posible. Nathan, welcome for the very first time to Radio FBNet. How are things in London?
I'm actually not in London, Edwin, at the moment. I'm in Solihull, which is my hometown here in England. But no, thank you very much for inviting me onto the show. I'm looking forward to talking about all things Caribbean football.
Well, there's this old saying that, you know, in Britain it's always raining. I can say that in Puerto Rico is currently raining more than over there.
I'm not going to lie to you. It is raining at the moment as I look outside my window. So typical British weather.
Well, Nathan, first of all, how is it that you get to cover Caribbean football? Because I mean, the CFU is like the backwater, like third world country that nobody cares about, at least in football terms.
I haven't really got a definitive answer as such. I mean, my story is that I started writing about football when I was around 14 years old, and I'm 20 now, so I've been doing it for a little while, and I basically realised that here in the UK, it was very mainstream. A lot of the football coverage was about the English Premier League, and I became a little bit disillusioned with that. So I realised that that Caribbean football really wasn't greatly covered online or in print, from what I found out. So I decided to, in the summer of 2012, create my website, Home of Caribbean Football, and just begin to try and follow the Caribbean game a little bit more and research about it. And yeah, kind of over the last few years, I've been able to write about it, talk about it, build up some good contacts. And I really, it's my number one passion now. I really believe there's a lot of potential for Caribbean football to grow. A lot of talented players who I think sometimes just need that opportunity to present itself so they can grow and blossom. But yeah, I really think that if you look at cricket in the Caribbean and how popular that is, how successful some of the teams have been, and also track and field, I think football definitely has the potential to be on the same level as cricket and track and field.
So what have you been hearing lately about the CFU? Because we had a conversation a couple of weeks ago, and we exchanged information, but just so that our viewers more or less have an idea of what's been going on in the CFU that you've been hearing about.
In terms of the kind of the independence discussion or the CFU club chat, I mean, there are different strands really, but
let's just start by the CFU club championship, and then we'll just go to the independence, because
sure.
At least that just recently came out with Marca. So
yeah. Well, the CFU Club Championship, there's been a bit of controversy and a bit of confusion surrounding the championship. Basically, in December last year, a draw came out, which had 20 clubs and 5 groups of 4. But it turned out that this draw that had come out was fake. It was artificial, and subsequently CONCACAF said that they would get involved instead of the CFU to sort this out, and they would take charge and they would conduct the official draw for the 2017 CFU Club Championship. So just earlier this week, a second draw has appeared. I was sent an image a couple of days ago. This looks a little bit more official, and I have had it confirmed by a managing director of one of the participating clubs that this is confirmed now. It's 20 clubs, 5 groups of 4 again, but there are proper dates to this layout. Now that it would start in February, so next month, and it would end in May. And these are usually the kind of dates that the CFU Club Championship falls on.
That sounds more like the information we got from Puerto Rico FC. We've been in conversations with them, and they've told us, look, this is going to start at the end of February. We're going to start our preseason literally next week. So that information seems to be more accurate than the one that was being at least spread in December.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, it looks more official, and I have had it confirmed to me by one source that it is official. But here's the thing, Edwin. I mean, there is controversy because you mentioned Puerto Rico's clubs there. I mean, Puerto Rico FC and Criollos are not represented in this version of the CFU Club Championship, and this is slightly confusing. I haven't got to the bottom of this yet. Been talking to people because obviously Puerto Rico FC won the Copa Luis Villarreal, didn't they, last year, towards the back end of last year, and that, by all intents and purposes, assured them of qualification to the CFU Club Championship. However, they're not represented. I'm not too sure why. I don't know if you've heard anything your end, and also I know that when we've talked off air, you said that Criollos might.
What I've been hearing is they actually got a confirmation from CONCACAF, telling them that they were going to be in the competition, and and they've been trying to vie for to actually become a host, one of the host teams.
So why is it then that they're not represented at all in this 20 club 5 groups of 4 format? Then I can't really understand that. I know that you said Criollos were lacking finances, so they were 50-50 over entering, but
Criollos basically backed down. They said they don't have the money, and what was the question was whether they would allow Metropolitan to actually take Criollos' spot, because not only had they been the third place team in the Copa Luis Villarejo, they also were the Puerto Rico Soccer League champions. So no matter which way you will look at it, the next team that should have been there to take the second spot for Puerto Rico, would have been Metropolitan, but apparently that also fell through. What is very interesting is that Puerto Rico FC is not, at least is not in the draw that you do have, but that they're but that they have the letters and the confirmations that, or at least they say they have the letters and confirmations that they will be playing in the CFU. Yeah,
and as you say there, it's very unclear at the moment. I just wish that CONCACAF, or indeed the CFU, would come out and clarify this. I mean, there's also controversy, which I haven't mentioned yet, over the Guyanese clubs, because recently both Guyanese clubs, Slingers and Alpha United, they basically had a dispute. It's quite a long, complicated situation, but they had a dispute with the Guyana Football Federation, and they both refused to partake in
the
an
new
expanded elite league. So what's happened now is the CONCACAF General Secretary Felipe Moggio has got involved. He sent various emails to the GFF, and it's basically transpired that the clubs actually might not be in the wrong. It might be the Football Federation itself that shouldn't have had the justification to expand the league, and the pair could be reinstated. So there's also this going on in the background with the Guyanese representatives. Are they going to play in the championship? Are they not allowed to play in the championship? It's up in the air at the moment.
CONCACAF said that they will not be allowed to play in the competition.
But now they did say that, but just in the last 24 hours or so, the news has come about that the pair now, Slingers and Alpha United, could be reinstated because it's been questioned whether the Ghana Football Federation were actually allowed to do what they did, i.e., expand the league.
This is I have an article here from the StabrookNews.com from January 12, where basically it says Erling calls on CONCACAF to explain reason behind club's non-participation. Clinton Erling, former Normalization Committee chairman of the Guyana Football Federation, said CONCACAF and the federation needs to explain why Guyana will not be represented at the 2017 CFU Club Championship. According to a press release from the GFF, the two clubs will not be allowed to participate in this year's CONCACAF Club Championships. In an exclusive interview with Stabrook Sports, Erling said both CONCACAF and the GFF owe the members of the GFF, the teams involved, and the country an explanation as to why no Guyana team would be able to participate in the 2017 championships. Additionally, the GFF Exco needs to be asked or say, which they would, if I have a subscription, I would be able to continue reading that. But that's basically what's been going on, or that's the last news we have on Guyana.
Yeah. So the reason why seemingly is because the GFF wanted to expand their elite league, you see, and increase the number of clubs for the 2017 season. But what's happened is there were 4 clubs that refused. They were Pele SC, Georgetown Football Club, Slingers, the reigning champions, and Alpha United. They refused to partake in the expanded league. And basically the reaction was, Football Federation said, okay, well, we're not going to, if that's your stance, we're going to basically ban you, suspend you, and you're not going to be able to play in the CFU Club Championship. CONCACAF then said, they've confirmed that non-participation. But as I say, in the last couple of days, Edwin, the news has come out that they could be reinstated because the GFF could be wrong. It's a very messy situation, and it's creating confusion because nobody can really confirm the draw at the moment with this going on with the Guyanese clubs, and also, of course, as we've said, Puerto Rico FC. You're saying that CONCACAF has messaged Puerto Rico FC saying, okay, we've got the information, you're okay to play. But then we look at this draw that's come out that's supposedly official, and they're not on there. They're not in any of the groups. They're not represented. So I just wish, basically, Edwin, that the CFU would get their act together really and just clarify what is going on, because they know. They have to know.
The CFU has always been a mess. Since Uncle Jack basically left back in 2011, it's been a mess of a confederation, or a mini confederation within a confederation, which leads us into the question: should CFU become an independent confederation from CONCACAF? What do you think about that?
Well, I'm a little bit torn at the moment on this. I mean, the discussion really, and just to stress, it's not official yet. Nothing's set in stone, but the discussion has come about in the wake of the 48-team World Cup expansion, and also the proposal of the Americas-wide World Cup qualifying. Now, as I say, there are pros and cons. One of the big pros behind the Caribbean going solo and separating itself from CONCACAF as a new confederation would be guaranteed Caribbean representation at every World Cup from 2026 onwards. Now, if CONCACAF does get the projected 6.5 spots from 2026 onwards, then the idea, you see, would be for the CFU to go independent, do its own qualifying system for the World Cup, and potentially take, something like 1.5 or even 2 spots of their own. So that would guarantee representation for their 25 FIFA-affiliated members every World Cup cycle, if that makes sense. And I recently featured an article from a guest writer on my blog, and he was saying that the Caribbean could have their own qualifying system for the World Cup, and the rest of CONCACAF, so the 7 Central American countries and the 3 North American, could run their own South American style format where there'd be 10 of them. They play 18 match days. Do you know what I mean? So that's basically World Cup qualifying and guaranteed representation is at the forefront, I think, of this idea. However, you could counter that and say, well, hang on, does the Caribbean Football Union actually need to go independent in order to get its own World Cup qualifying format?
I don't think
Not
so.
necessarily.
Not necessarily.
Does
they
it?
could actually do like they do in Europe, where you have regions set up, and depending, the group winners go directly into the World Cup, and then you have the second best winners play a different repechaje or a playoff for the remaining spots.
Exactly. I mean, it would be basically, as you say, it would be stratified World Cup qualifying. So what would happen is the Caribbean Football Union wouldn't have to go independent. CONCACAF would stay as it is, but we would have stratified World Cup qualifying, meaning that the Caribbean Football Union has its own qualifying format. North and Central America have their own qualifying, and then when qualifying is finished, all of the teams come together and they go to the World Cup finals. I mean, we're still not sure yet on the amount of spots that will be allocated to each confederation. That hasn't been confirmed by FIFA. As I say, it's projected that CONCACAF would get 6.5. At the moment, they have 3.5, so it would be an increase there, almost double. So there's plenty to think about. But the thing with the CFU is that they make up a lot of the CONCACAF membership. They have 31 out of the 41 members within CONCACAF, and that's really what stands in their favour. Their political clout, the fact that they exude influence politically. So CONCACAF, you see, they might not want to lose that. If the CFU were to turn around and say, right, we're leaving, they could potentially use that as leverage, you see, if you follow. They could say, right, we're going to leave CONCACAF unless you, as FIFA, give the green light on having our own qualifying so we can get guaranteed representation at every World Cup.
It would be very interesting, at least because in cultural terms, you could actually get a split in the CFU, whereas the Hispanic nations or the island nations would choose to, I don't know, maybe incorporate into the UNCAF, which is the Central American Confederation, and then the English and French and Dutch speaking islands would basically stay in the CFU. So basically, you would get Cuba, the Dominican Republic, and maybe Puerto Rico joining the UNCAF, whereas you would, the other half of Hispaniola would actually stay in the CFU. That would be actually very interesting.
Do you think that Puerto Rico? Do you think that Puerto Rico would want to potentially join UNCAF?
There have been the Central American Confederation has in the past looked at the possibility for Puerto Rico to actually play in the UNCAF because of cultural reasons. They basically said that they would wish Puerto Rico would be part of the UNCAF, which could be a double-edged sword because we could be another Belize. So it's been talked about, it's been romanticized, but at least the political climate within FIFA was not the best when it was being discussed.
It's very interesting. I mean, you mentioned Belize there. There's even been talk of Belize leaving UNCAF and joining the CFU. Potentially, I know there's been talk of that in the past because they're seen as culturally more similar to the Caribbean.
Like Guyana, Suriname, and
French Guiana.
And French Guiana. But French Guiana doesn't participate in the World Cup qualifiers.
No. No, they're not affiliated to FIFA.
Just like Martinique and Guadeloupe do not participate. Correct. Also in the FIFA World Cup qualifiers, but which is weird because they do participate in the CFU Club Championship.
They do. I think that's because they're members of CONCACAF, so they can participate in the CFU Club Championship and the CONCACAF Champions League, but they can't play in FIFA because they're all three are French overseas departments, and what that means is the French Football Federation basically won't allow them, Martinique, Guadeloupe, or French Guiana, to join FIFA. There's lots of politicizing behind it. It might change in the future, but at the moment, those three are only members of CONCACAF and not FIFA. So there's plenty to think about. I mean, going back to the independence,
it's interesting because this is a very, very hot topic, and I don't have problems going into it. But for example, Puerto Rico participates as an independent, quote unquote, nation when it's not independent, and politically speaking, it is a territory of the United States. So technically, the United States could say, well, our territories are no longer going to participate as independent nations, and that's it. They wouldn't be able to participate anymore as national teams or in the Olympics. Though I would argue that the FIFA charter actually says that Guadeloupe, Martinique could become members, but that would depend on the French Republic, though.
Because I think the French Football Federation, what it is they probably not comfortable with the idea of Guadeloupe, Martinique, or French Guiana joining FIFA, because a lot of these players you see that come from those countries, they go on to play for France.
Yeah.
They go on to play for France. I mean, there are plenty of examples. You only have to look at somebody like Florent Malouda, who's from French Guiana. Pardon?
Thierry Henry from Guadeloupe.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Henry was born in France, but he's got Martiniquois and Guadeloupean heritage. Lilian Thuram was born in Guadeloupe, and he went on to play for France, a World Cup winner. So I think if Guadeloupe, Martinique, or French Guiana join FIFA, that would cap tie players, a lot of players who France have ultimately benefited from. So there's that to think about.
So basically, in the end, it's all about the interest of one nation versus the other, because Guadeloupe, Martinique, they play with their national teams in CONCACAF.
That's right.
It would be really interesting to see what would happen if, for example, Martinique or Guadeloupe won the Gold Cup. So would they go play in the Confederations Cup against possibly...
I honestly don't know. That's a really, really intriguing... I mean, I suppose they'd have to revise their status, wouldn't they? I mean, Martinique are going to be playing in this year's Gold Cup, so hypothetically, if they were to win the Gold Cup, they would qualify for the Confederations.
I mean, it's just a what if, because we know Martinique is not going to win. We know it's going to be either Mexico or Costa Rica or the United States. But either way, it would be really interesting. If we have a Jamaica, for example, a Jamaica type situation like last Gold Cup, where they ended up playing in the semifinals after eliminating the United States. Well, not the semifinals. I mean the finals of the Gold Cup. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's an interesting situation that's going to be. You talk about here. Next month, there's going to be the CONCACAF Beach Soccer Championship, and those act as the World Cup qualifiers for the Beach Soccer World Cup. And interestingly, which you've just talked about there, Guadeloupe are participating at the championship, but they cannot qualify for the Beach Soccer World Cup. Why? Because they're not members of FIFA. So So they're basically using the CONCACAF Championship at beach soccer level to just enhance their development as a beach soccer nation. But even if they were to win their group and actually get into a qualifying position, they can't play at the Beach Soccer World Cup. Likewise, Martinique played at the 2014 Women's Caribbean Cup that doubled up as the World Cup qualifiers for 2015. And if they were to win their group and get into a qualifying position, likewise, again, they wouldn't be able to play at the Women's World Cup. So they could basically their Gold Cup is their World Cup.
Exactly.
You know? That's what
But
French Guyanese.
The question would be though, would France be able to stop Guadeloupe if they tried to ask for FIFA membership? Because, for example, since they're not in the same confederation, it would be really hard for them to stop it. I mean, look at the example for what's this Gibraltar.
Mm-hmm.
Gibraltar recently joined the UEFA, and Spain had very little power to stop them. And Gibraltar's not an independent nation; it's an overseas UK it's not even a territory; it's a province of the United Kingdom.
Yeah, that's true. Would France be able to stop them? I'm not 100% sure on the relationship between the Guadeloupe FA and the French FA, but I know from what I've been told in the past that I think those three French overseas departments have tried to integrate into FIFA, but I'm pretty sure the French Football Federation has some control over them. There was an article that came out on Sportsmax TV, and it was looking at Saint Martin. And Saint Martin, one of the smaller islands in the Caribbean, they're a French overseas collectivity. Now, they're not a member of FIFA at the moment, but the president was Fabrice Bally was saying that the Saint Martin FA did apply for membership of FIFA. And he wanted to join FIFA so they could play more games, they could participate in World Cup qualifiers. And if I remember correctly, he said that Saint Martin wanted a kind of a double position like they have in Tahiti. Now, Tahiti are in FIFA, but at the same time, they're in the French system. So they have like a double position.
So it's basically it would be basically it depends up to the laws of their country.
I think so. Yeah, I think it's all relative.
It's relative because, for example, let me use Puerto Rico's as an example. Puerto Rico is a territory, so being a territory, it is allowed to play as an independent entity or sports entity from aside from the United States. But if Puerto Rico were to become state or a member of the United States as a full-fledged part of the full-fledged union, we theoretically, Puerto Rico could continue participating in CONCACAF, just like Guadeloupe and Martinique. But what my question would be is if they would be able to participate in the World Cup qualifiers, and would they be able to participate in the Olympic qualifiers. In the Olympic qualifiers, I know they wouldn't be able to, because there's a federal law in the United States that basically says there's going to be only one. There can only be one Olympic team within the United States Union. So technically, Olympic-wise, Puerto Rico wouldn't be able to participate in the Olympics. But my question still remains, and it's a very, very it's a very, very vague area. It's a very gray area because there will be no other previous what would be examples of that we could actually talk about. The closest example would be Martinique and Guadeloupe, but they don't participate in the World Cup qualifiers. So
no.
that would be my only question. And if, let's just say, the CFU actually does become independent, that would actually make the argument for Puerto Rico continuing to participate as a different entity in, at least in football, as a football national team, more powerful, because they wouldn't be in the same confederation, just like Guadeloupe and Martinique do not participate in UEFA. They're not part of UEFA, so that actually gives the argument that they can participate, at least in a regional sense.
I mean, they're not part of UEFA, but the Coupe de France, which is like the French FA Cup, it's their big cup tournament in France. I know that French Guyanese, Martinique and Guadeloupean clubs do participate in the Coupe de France, which is interesting, because although they are their own overseas departments, their clubs are allowed to participate against other French clubs. So that would be like a Puerto Rican club
participating in the US Open Cup.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, obviously you've got Puerto Rico FC at the moment, which play in the NASL, and that's kind of similar. But it would be like they're playing in the US Open Cup. But what you said about Puerto Rico, potentially kind of like if they were to merge into the United States and not kind of be their own overseas territory, I wouldn't like that. I think it would take away Puerto Rico's identity. And the same would apply for the US Virgin Islands, who are another unincorporated overseas territory of the US. Say if both of those, Puerto Rico and US Virgin Islands, merged into the USA, similar to if Guadeloupe and Martinique were to do that with France, I just feel like their identity would be taken away.
But Guadeloupe and Martinique are part of France. What the overseas departments in the case of Martinique and Guadeloupe, they're more like provinces of France outside of France. They are part of France proper. Isn't Puerto Rico? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I might be wrong here, but isn't Puerto Rico a part of the US outside of the US, similar to Martinique is part of France outside of France? It's not the same, because in the case of Martinique and Guadeloupe, they would be like states of France. If France were a federal republic, Guadeloupe and Martinique would be states of France. Whereas in the case of the United States, which is a federal republic, we are a territory of the United States, but not part of the United States.
Right. Okay. So slightly different then.
Yeah, it is very different, because we are in the national sense, we are a colony of the United States, whereas Martinique and Guadeloupe are part of proper France. They were annexed into France proper. Which is why I say the argument is not it wouldn't be the same, and the argument, my current argument, is based on their example, which is different because they actually got their FAs after becoming members of France proper, which is what I think is the problem as to why they're not part of FIFA.
Possibly. I mean, I just can't see in the foreseeable future, French Guiana, Martinique, or Guadeloupe becoming part of FIFA, and the kind of the main reason for that is the situation with the French Football Federation, and the French FA, they know very well, they're not naive. They know that, I'm not necessarily saying this is right or agree with it, but they realise that if their French overseas departments were to become FIFA affiliated, a lot of the players born in French Guiana, in Martinique and Guadeloupe, like a Lilian Thuram or a Florent Malouda, they get cap-tied. They play in World Cup qualifiers most likely when they were younger for their home country. Which some people will say, okay, well, that's only right, that's only fair. Others would say that, French people will probably say, no, we need to benefit from that. So I think out of kind of almost greed, in a way, I think the French FA would do everything in their power to block that. I really do.
But in the end, it would all depend on the FIFA statutes. And,
it would, and I'm going to be honest, I haven't.
And politics. So,
Yeah.
the last thing I read from the FIFA statutes, basically they said that a territory can become a member of FIFA. A territory. But the question is, what does a territory mean to FIFA? Does it mean a part of another country that is already incorporated to the other country, or does it mean a colony of the other country? See, that's the ambiguity of FIFA.
Yeah,
which
it is very ambiguous. I mean, if you look at the Dutch-speaking Caribbean nations, right? I mean, within the Kingdom of the Netherlands,
exactly.
Okay, you've got Curacao, haven't you, and Aruba. Now, Curacao and Aruba are FIFA members. They play in FIFA,
and they are municipalities of the Netherlands.
Well, I think technically, Aruba and Curacao are constituent countries, and the special municipalities are Bonaire, Saba, Saint Eustatius,
and Sava, which are which were the parts of the Dutch Netherlands, Caribbean Dutch Netherlands.
That's right, the Netherlands Antilles.
But when we talk about constituent countries, look at, for example, the UK. Is Wales an independent country? It is a constituent country of the United Kingdom.
That's right.
It's the same. It's the same. It's the same organization. Basically, I think the Netherlands have the same idea behind the Brits. You have England participates as a separate country, but it is part of the United Kingdom. It is a constituent country. It is not an independent section. Whereas the same happens with Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. And Northern Ireland is not even a country. Because if we take into consideration, Northern Ireland is not a country. It is a territory of the United Kingdom. Because
you're right, and like you said, England participate as a country, but yeah, technically speaking, they are part of the United Kingdom. But it is interesting that Aruba and Curacao themselves are part of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, and they are part of FIFA. Has the Dutch FA objected to this? No. But Sint Maarten, who are a constituent country, they're not part of FIFA.
So basically, it would also depend on the country per se. And,
I think so. I mean,
I think it also depends. It's the idea because, for example, Aruba and Curacao were already members of FIFA before their full integration into the Netherlands back in the early 2000s.
Yep, that is another good point. That is a good, because Aruba, they left the Netherlands Antilles. I think it was in 1986. So they left and they became their own country. You know, but Curacao, they remained along with Bonaire. When the Netherlands Antilles
until the Netherlands Antilles broke up and they decided to do the municipality thing. So basically, those islands are European soil in Caribbean waters. They are part of the Netherlands. They are incorporated into the Netherlands. They have representation in the Dutch Parliament.
Yeah, that's right. And in 2010, when the Netherlands Antilles dissolved, what they then had, the structure was 3 special municipalities, Saba, Saint Eustatius and Bonaire, and those 4 constituent countries, the Netherlands themselves, Curacao, Aruba and Sint Maarten. So that was the new structure, you see, and obviously Curacao took on the mantle of representing the Netherlands Antilles as Curacao, and they've only enjoyed lots of progress really ever since. So it's all very interesting. It's quite complicated though, that you kind of have to look through the FIFA statutes.
And then you go, for example, to Hong Kong. What happens to Hong Kong? Hong Kong is a part of China, but they participate.
Hong Kong is completely without completely kind of what's the word, out of my remit. I think I wouldn't know the kind of the political situation with China and Hong Kong.
I would have guessed you would, at least, because Hong Kong was a United Kingdom territory up to 2000. And that's when they transferred sovereignty over to China. So that's where the two system, one country thing started back in the 2000s. Hong Kong,
there are obviously examples of this all over the world.
Hong Kong is a special province within the Chinese communist system, but that is up to 2050. Once 2050 comes, that special status will be dissolved. So what happens to Hong Kong then? Will China allow them to continue participating? The same happens to is it Macau? It's Macau, but in Portuguese, in that C is actually a more like an S sound. It's Macau. So Macau was a Portuguese port or colony. They also transferred sovereignty over to China, and they have the same arrangement as Hong Kong, and I think they participate internationally in sports.
And they're a colony. Did you say of?
No. They are a province. They're a province of China.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I don't know where Portugal came from.
Because Macau was a port colony of the Portuguese Empire.
Right. Oh, it feels like we've definitely been given a very comprehensive political
history.
Yeah. It's really interesting though. It is all really, really interesting. It's just I don't know. There's a lot of
the historian in me just took over, and he was like, let's try to explain this in a more sensible way.
Linking politics and football, it's always difficult. But no, I think there are a lot of complicated kind of like what's the word? Administrative things that kind of affect whether.
Now I'm gonna throw the ball into your neck of the woods. For example, up to where I know, Turks and Caicos and British Virgin Islands and what's the other ways? Bermuda, they're FIFA members, right?
That's right. So they're British overseas territories. So you've got as you say, you've got Bermuda, British Virgin Islands. There's also Cayman Islands, Anguilla, Montserrat are another one. Turks and Caicos. They're all territories of Great Britain. So they've never been independent, but they are all part of FIFA. So the Turks and Caicos, Montserrat, Anguilla, they all play in World Cup qualifiers. Yeah.
So my question would be, if those territories, all of a sudden, Britain decided to incorporate them into provinces of the United Kingdom, which I think it's more like the overseas territories are considered more like provinces, which would be more they're annexed or incorporated into. Would the UK allow them to continue playing?
Again, I think it comes back to
and by the way, those territories that you said, they don't have Olympic teams. They have representation. No. They have national teams. But they don't have Olympic representation. None of those.
That's correct.
None of those teams are Bermuda, Turks and Caicos, Caymans. What was the other one? British Virgin Islands. None of them participate, for example, in the Pan American Games, in the Central American Games, or in the Olympic Games.
No, they don't. I mean, there's an example of Zarnell Hughes, who's a 21-year-old sprinter, 100 meter, 200 meter. He's from Anguilla, and he runs for Great Britain. And he's going to continue to do that, I think, at upcoming Olympic Games. So, no, they don't in the Olympics. I mean, Bermuda, they play in the Island Games, which is the Island Games is kind of a mini tournament for
British overseas territories in the Caribbean.
Yeah, I think not just in the Caribbean though. I'm pretty sure like Greenland have played in the Island Games before. There's a few others as well. Yeah, and it's not just football; they do different sports. But it's if like these British overseas territories were to become incorporated into the Great Britain, I think it comes back to what we were saying. It varies. It's all relative, isn't it? So I think Great Britain, they would probably make that decision themselves. Are we going to allow the BVI or Turks and Caicos to continue to represent, independently or not?
But I think that already answers itself. They are allowed to play in FIFA as a different sports entity, but they're not allowed in terms of the Olympic Charter. Why? Because FIFA allows this type of relationship. Which is why we go back to Guadeloupe and Martinique, which is why I'm still wondering if Bermuda, if Cayman Islands, if Anguilla, all of them participate as different entities within the FIFA. Why isn't Martinique and Guadeloupe allowed?
Again, I really think it's to do with the French Football Federation.
I think it's basically that. I think it's basically that the best players from the French French team come from the Caribbean, and then France would stop getting those players. I would understand why, but I mean, in politically and statutory, they have no reason why they wouldn't be allowed to be with FIFA. I mean, I've taken you around the world with different examples.
It's fantastic. I'm sure all the listeners as well are learning a lot. But yeah, I mean, at the moment though, if a player from Guadeloupe, plays for Guadeloupe, say they play in a Gold Cup qualifier, okay, a Caribbean Cup game, then they can still go on to play for France, maybe in the same year. That situation it's possible. So somebody that plays for Guadeloupe can go and play for France the next week if they want to.
No,
but once they play for France, then they have to wait 5 years. That's the current rule. They have to wait then 5 years until then they can return and play for a Martinique or a Guadeloupe. So Julien Faubert is a good example. Julien Faubert, he played for France. He then had a 5-year break, and he made his debut for Martinique in 2014. There's also been talk of Florent Malouda, who is mentioned already on the show. Now, he last played for France in 2012. 5 years, obviously, is nearly coming to an end, and there's been talk that he might play for French Guiana, his country of birth, in the Gold Cup this summer. That's a possibility.
So there you go. You have France is the more difficult of the Caribbean relationships.
Definitely, yeah. It's very complicated. It's very, very complicated, but it's all very interesting. Just the whole subject of FIFA and CFU independence. It's there are lots of different strands to it, but can I just say that the one thing that would worry me, Edwin, about the Caribbean going independent, the one thing that would really concern me is the administrative incompetence across Caribbean football. That would really concern me. Yeah?
Now that's a whole completely different subject.
It is, and we won't go. We'll be here for hours and hours.
We could spend another 45 minutes talking about how incompetent are Caribbean officials, and that's from Cuba all the way down to Aruba. So.
I agree, but I just wanted to say that that would be one of the main reasons against the CFU going independent, because historically there's been a lot of, you don't need me to tell you this or the listeners, there's been a lot of haphazard organisation of stuff, financial mismanagement, confusion over tournament rules, tournament regulations, corruption, as we saw with the FBI arrests in May 2015. So that would be, the kind of the notion of leaving Caribbean Football Union by itself, as a kind of a separate confederation, and knowing that, the track record of a lot of Caribbean football administrators, that would concern me, that would worry me. And that would be, I think, one of the overriding reasons against independence, Edwin.
I mean, if they would, and I know this is not going to happen, but if they allow at least the CFU offices to be in Puerto Rico, I wouldn't mind, because at least I know that the FBI will be supervising them.
That's true. I mean, it's a real shame that we have to, you know. I want to stress that there are good, transparent, honest, hard-working Caribbean football officials. You know, there are.
Yes, they are. But
somebody like Gary Mussenden,
but then
Anton Seeley.
But then you have the spoiled or rotten or seeds, and
yeah,
and it's bad because, you know, those small rotten tomatoes, they are the ones that get the more publicity. They are the ones that they are the image of CFU, and it's not fair, because we have even in the Puerto Rico FA, we have very good, hardworking people there.
Exactly.
We also have very lazy or not as efficient. I'm trying to be nice here. Not as efficient people working in the FA. So, you know, you have everything. You have you have everything, and that goes throughout the entire region. That goes from Bahamas, that goes for Bermuda, which I've never understood why Bermuda. Why Bermuda is part of the CFU, but yeah, sure.
Yeah, that's a whole different kettle of fish, I think. But yeah, I mean, you're right. It's a mixed bag. You've got some good. It's like with most confederations, you could say it just seems to be that historically, Caribbean Football Union has been home to more kind of those kind of administrators, and I just wish that the CFU would, if anything, would just be more clear and concise with the public, with the fans.
Transparent. At least transparency.
Transparency, exactly. Simple things like releasing tournament regulations for the Caribbean Cup, for example.
Having a well-run website with current information, with rules to each of the of how each competition works. That would be that would change everything.
It would, and it's not that difficult to do. You know, we're in the 21st century now. You know that we're in a digital age. I mean, Gordon Derrick said last year, the current CFU president, Gordon Derrick, he put in his manifesto that he would like to implement a streaming service. Okay, a streaming service which would stream all of the CFU related matches from under 17 to under 20 to Caribbean Cup.
But then you have the problem that
that's possible.
It's really hard, and I'm going to tell you this out front. That's going to take a lot of time to do it. Why? And I think with this we can start concluding the program, because we're going around on the hour mark now.
Okay.
The problem with having one streaming service in the Caribbean is that it's the internet. You have, if you go, for example, to the Dominican Republic, you need to work with different internet companies. You go to Puerto Rico, you have to work with American internet providers.
Sure.
And then
can't the independent FAs, Edwin, can't the independent FAs like the Dominican Republic FA or the Bermudian FA, can't they, off their own back, you know, take the initiative and produce streaming and send guys out there to commentate, to interview? No?
I mean, I've been working at least, I have a streaming service, so I know that the federation does actually reach out to people. But one thing is, for example, you can have the FA, you know, I'm going to use Cuba, for example. Cuba might want to broadcast their games over the internet, but Cuban internet is extremely limited. Not to mention that it's censored, but extremely limited. So how would the Cuban Federation be able to do that? They would need the Cuban government. But is the Cuban government in a position to provide the streaming services? And then you go to Haiti. Is there any internet infrastructure in Haiti?
Okay, well that would have to be looked at. I mean, I think Cuba, Haiti, and maybe a couple of others would be exceptions. But I know that the Antigua and Barbuda FA, they've got a streaming service. You know, they're generally pretty good. There are a lot of other islands. You know,
it depends. It depends on the particular island. No, I'm gonna give you another one. Where the island there's this UK territory that has a volcano that's constantly erupting. Montserrat. Mm-hmm. Montserrat. I don't think Montserrat has the best. I don't think they don't even play their games in Montserrat.
No, I mean I did watch I watched Montserrat against the US Virgin Islands in a 2014 Caribbean Cup qualifier, and I remember Montserrat they broadcast from the Blake Estate Stadium in Montserrat, and that was a broadcast. It was live. It was pretty good from what I can remember. So I get what you're saying, Edwin. I know there are challenges, but they can surely. We're in the 21st century now, you know, in a digital age. There's lots of technology available. I'm sure that some of these challenges can be overcome.
They can.
But surely.
But they need to be worked on, and then you have to have people that actually know what they're talking about and doing. So.
Exactly. And generally, I just want to make the last point on a wider scale, having that website, you know, in place, having a fully run media department, having people on the ground to go and interview players, write articles, provide news. This is all very doable. You know, I mean, I can honestly count the number of people I know at the CFU on one hand, you know, and I've been following it now for half a decade, and I can only count on one hand you know, it's very, very difficult to get in contact with a CFU.
It's easier
for them to communicate.
I'm going to tell you this: it's easier to communicate with CONCACAF than it is with CFU.
True, and even that can sometimes be an uphill struggle. You know, even that can be hard. So,
well, for me, it's just pick up the phone and call the CONCACAF offices. But
well, I mean, maybe I'm not in that. Yeah,
it would be really harder for you because it would be an international call. But in my case, it's a local call. So.
Yeah, I suppose CONCACAF is a little bit easier, I know, but I don't know. I don't want to dampen the show or you know or kind of stress on the negatives at all. I just wish that the CFU would communicate with the public, with the fans. Take the CFU Club Championship as a prime example. Can we have some clarification on this? What is the official draw? It's the 15th of January now. You know, can we have some clarification on this, please? Anyone from the CFU is listening, because you know, there's only so many emails and messages and Twitter comments that you can send. Edwin.
I'm gonna try to have somebody from Puerto Rico FC, and I'll try to talk to the Secretary General again for the Puerto Rico FA. See if they know anything. If you could at least send me the image that you have, so that I could at least show it to them. Definitely. And get you know. Try to see what's going on.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I don't mind sending that to you, or I did put it out on my Twitter page as well. If anyone would like to go over there and have a look at it at Caribbean Football, football abbreviated to FTBL, and that the image is on there. I'm pretty sure I've had it confirmed that it is official, but just if the CFU could confirm that would be fantastic.
Okay. Well, is there anything else, any other way that our people might be able to contact you?
Well, I'm kind of quite active on Twitter, so it's at Caribbean Football, as I say, football abbreviated to FTBL. My website is www.thehomeofcaribbeanfootball.com. And if you'd like to maybe get in touch on email, I don't know, you know, if you want to be formal, I guess, then it's caribbeanfootball@hotmail.co.uk. I'm always happy to discuss things, answer some questions, talk to people, whether it be about Puerto Rican football or generally Caribbean football. So, yeah, feel free to get in touch.
Well, I do hope that this will not be the last time you're over in our podcast. This isn't it. I appreciate you coming over as a guest. Y esto ha sido todo por hoy por Radio FBNET. La semana que viene, otro programa de la segunda temporada. Muchas gracias a todos los que nos están escuchando.